They set her up as a joke on a blind date. But the single dad CEO froze everyone by proposing. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The restaurant was glowing in warm golden light. Polished glasses lined up neatly on the tables, silverware shining like it was waiting for an expensive performance. The soft piano in the corner made everything sound more romantic than it truly was. For Emma, however, this night was no fairy tale. She had been dragged here by her coworkers, who whispered, snickered, and exchanged secret glances the moment she stepped in. They told her it was a blind date. They said it would be fun, that she deserved a night out, that someone was waiting for her. But what Emma did not know was that they had planned it as a cruel joke. The man was not real. The seat across from her was supposed to stay empty, and she was supposed to sit there, nervously clutching her small purse, while the others hid at a nearby table to laugh at her expense. Emma smoothed the sleeves of her modest cardigan, the one she wore every day because it was warm enough for late September evenings. She kept her head down, trying not to notice the muffled laughter from across the room. The glass of water in front of her trembled slightly as she reached for it, her hands betraying her nerves. She whispered to herself, "Just 30 minutes. If he does not show up, I will leave. I will not give them the satisfaction." "Oh," the waiter approached politely, offering her a menu. She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that looked like it cost more effort than it gave joy. "I am waiting for someone," she said softly, though she already doubted her own words. From the other table, a coworker whispered too loudly, "Look at her. She really thinks someone would come for her." The laughter that followed was like tiny daggers, piercing Emma's composure, though she lifted her chin, refusing to let her tears fall. Then, without warning, the restaurant doors opened. A tall man in a dark tailored suit walked in, his presence immediately drawing the eyes of the entire room. His stride was steady, confident, yet his expression carried the weight of someone who had lived through storms and carried responsibilities most men would never know. He scanned the room, then his gaze fell on Emma. For a moment, she froze. She did not know him. She had never seen him before. But the man walked straight toward her table, as if he had. The coworkers at the other table stopped laughing mid-breath, watching in disbelief. "Emma?" the man asked, his deep voice steady, yet unexpectedly gentle. She blinked, confused. "Yes?" He gave a small smile, the kind that could melt away suspicion yet held its own mystery. "I am sorry I am late. May I sit?" The room seemed to freeze. Emma's coworkers stared, their laughter dying in their throats. Emma's heart pounded in her chest, her mind racing. Who was this man? Why did he say her name? And why did his presence make her feel, for the first time that evening, like maybe the cruel game was about to backfire on those who set it up? What Emma did not know yet was that this man was not just anybody. He was Daniel Carter, a single father and the CEO of one of the city's most powerful companies. And in less than an hour, he would shatter every expectation, every smirk, every cruel whisper in that room with a single move no one saw coming. But for now, Emma could only stare at him, caught between disbelief and the strange, terrifying hope that fate itself had just intervened. Daniel's voice still lingered in the air, deep and steady, as he pulled the chair across from Emma and sat down. Emma could feel every eye in the restaurant fixed on them. Her coworkers were frozen at their table, mouths slightly open, unable to laugh anymore. Emma's lips parted, but no words came out. She had no idea why this man was speaking to her as if he had known her, or why he had chosen to sit down at a table that was meant to be a cruel stage for her humiliation. The waiter, clearly relieved that the empty seat was no longer a problem, returned with 2 menus. "Would you like to order now, sir?" Daniel gave a small nod. "Yes. We will start with the house salad and 2 entrees. I will take the ribeye, medium rare. And for the lady," he glanced at Emma, waiting. Emma's throat felt dry. She whispered, "The pasta, please." The waiter scribbled down the order, then hurried away, leaving Emma alone, under the weight of Daniel's calm stare. Emma finally found her voice. I am sorry, but do we know each other? Daniel leaned back slightly, folding his hands together. Not yet, but I heard your name. Oh. Emma's brows drew together. From where? He tilted his head toward the corner table where her coworkers sat stiff and pale. They were saying it loud enough. I figured I would save you from whatever joke they thought was funny. Emma's breath caught, so he did not actually know her. He was a stranger who had stepped in when he realized she was the target of their cruelty. Her cheeks flushed hot with a mixture of gratitude and embarrassment. I did not need saving, she said quickly, though her voice trembled. I can handle myself. Daniel's gaze softened, but there was still steel underneath. No one deserves to be laughed at for simply showing up. Emma dropped her eyes to the table. Her fingers twisted the edge of the napkin in her lap. She wanted to believe his words, but she also knew that kindness from a stranger could turn into mockery just as easily. Her coworkers had proven that tonight. From across the room, one of the women muttered too loudly, "Why would a man like that sit with her?" The words cut sharp, but before Emma could shrink under them, Daniel spoke again, his voice calm yet carrying enough strength that the nearby tables fell silent. Do you come here often? He asked, as if nothing outside their table mattered. Emma blinked. No, I usually do not eat at places like this. Oh? Then you must allow yourself to enjoy tonight, he replied, almost as if it were not a suggestion, but a gentle command. The food arrived quickly, plates set down with quiet efficiency. Emma tried to eat, though every bite felt heavy under the weight of the eyes, still stealing glances at them. She whispered, "They are not going to stop watching." Daniel's fork paused midair. He looked at her with an expression that seemed to both study and protect. Then let them watch. Ugh. Emma's heart skipped. There was a firmness in his tone that felt like a shield being drawn around her. She had not asked for it, but for the first time that night, she did not feel entirely exposed. Still, doubt gnawed at her. Why was he doing this? What did he gain from sitting here? From pretending to be her date, in front of a room full of judgmental strangers. Emma set down her fork, her voice barely above a whisper. You do not know me. You do not owe me anything. Oh? Daniel leaned forward slightly, his eyes steady. Maybe not. But sometimes stepping in is the right thing to do. Sometimes one small choice can change everything. His words echoed inside her, unsettling and comforting all at once. Emma tried to steady her breathing, but she could not shake the thought that this night, which had started as a cruel setup, was turning into something far more complicated. And as the murmurs of her coworkers faded into silence, Emma realized that the cruel laughter had been replaced by a far more dangerous sound, her own heart beginning to hope. The dinner plates had been cleared, and the soft piano continued to play in the background, but Emma felt more restless with each passing moment. She could feel Daniel's steady presence across the table like a weight, calm and immovable. It unsettled her because it was easier to deal with cruel laughter than it was to handle kindness that she did not understand. When the waiter returned with the check, Emma quickly reached for her small purse. Her coworkers were watching. She could feel their stares. She refused to let them think she had accepted a free meal from a stranger. She pulled out a folded $20 bill, the largest she had, and placed it on the tray. Daniel glanced at the money, then back at her. He did not touch it. Instead, he pulled out a black card and placed it beside the tray with a quiet finality. The waiter nodded and whisked it away without question. Emma stiffened. I said I would pay for myself. Daniel's eyes met hers, calm but firm. And I said you should enjoy tonight. Let me. Her lips parted, but no words came. She felt heat rise to her cheeks again, a mixture of anger and something she did not want to name. She wanted to stand, to walk out, but the thought of facing the smug looks of her coworkers waiting outside made her sit still, her fists tightening in her lap. When they finally rose from the table, the group at the corner made no effort to hide their whispers. Emma kept her head high, determined not to give them the satisfaction of seeing her falter. But as she stepped outside, the cool night air struck her face like a reminder of reality. She was still the same Emma, the girl they thought was a joke. Daniel walked beside her, silent at first. The street was alive with the glow of city lights and the sound of cars rushing past. Finally, he spoke. Do you have a ride home? Emma shook her head. I took the bus here. I will give you a ride, he said simply. She stopped walking, turning to face him. No, that is not necessary. I do not know you. Tonight was already strange enough. Oaked, for the first time, a faint smile tugged at the corner of his lips. You are cautious. That is good. But at least let me wait with you at the bus stop. Her instinct was to argue, but there was something about the way he said it steady, unyielding, that made her nod despite herself. Together, they walked toward the corner where the bus would arrive. Emma kept her distance, standing a step ahead, arms wrapped around herself for warmth. Daniel removed his coat without a word and draped it over her shoulders. Emma froze, her fingers brushing the expensive fabric. She wanted to give it back immediately, but the sudden comfort of warmth held her still. I did not ask for this, she murmured. I know, Daniel replied, but sometimes people need things they do not ask for. Silence fell between them, broken only by the hum of traffic. Emma stared down the street, her heart pounding in a rhythm that felt foreign. She could hear her coworkers' laughter in her memory, but it no longer carried the same sharpness. The bus headlights appeared in the distance. Emma took a small step forward. Thank you for stepping in tonight. You did not have to. Daniel's gaze rested on her, unreadable yet intense. You are right. I did not have to. But I wanted to. Emma boarded the bus, the coat still around her shoulders. She thought about giving it back, but the driver urged her forward, and the doors hissed shut. Through the window, she saw Daniel still standing there on the sidewalk, hands in his pockets, watching as the bus pulled away. Emma clutched the coat tighter, her mind tangled in questions she could not answer. Who was this man really? And why did it feel as if this night, meant to humiliate her, had just placed something far heavier into her hands, something she was not ready to carry, but could not let go of either? The following morning, Emma stepped into the office building where she worked as a junior assistant. The fluorescent lights buzzed above her, and the sound of heels clicking against the tile echoed through the hallways. She carried Daniel's coat carefully folded over her arm, intending to find a way to return it. She had hardly slept, replaying the evening in her mind, wondering why a stranger would stand up for her so boldly. As soon as she entered, the whispers began. Her coworkers had beaten her there, spreading their version of the story. A woman at the front desk smirked. So, Emma, how was your blind date with your mysterious millionaire? The mocking tone made several others snicker. Emma's cheeks warmed, but she lifted her chin. It was dinner, nothing more. Another voice chimed in from the corner. He actually stayed the whole time? Poor man, he must have felt sorry for you. Laughter followed, bouncing harshly off the sterile walls. Emma gripped the coat tighter. She wanted to vanish, but she forced herself to walk straight to her desk. She had endured these kinds of comments before, but after last night, they cut deeper. They did not know that the stranger they mocked had changed something inside her. By mid-morning, the office buzzed louder than usual. Phones rang, printers hummed, but a sudden hush swept across the floor. Emma looked up, startled. Daniel Carter stood in the doorway. He wore another sharp suit, his shoulders straight, his presence commanding. Conversations stopped. The air shifted. Tense and uncertain. Emma's heart dropped. She rose quickly, nearly knocking her chair over. "What are you doing here?" she whispered when he reached her desk. Daniel's gaze flicked to the others who were pretending to work but clearly listening. "I came for my coat." Emma's fingers tightened on the folded fabric. She held it out with both hands, her voice low. "You should not have come here." Daniel accepted the coat, but instead of leaving, he placed it over his arm and looked around the room. "Interesting office culture you have here," he said calmly, his words deliberate. The silence deepened. Emma's coworkers shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting between him and Emma. Emma swallowed hard. "Please, just go." Daniel leaned closer, his voice low enough for only her to hear. "You said last night that you can handle yourself. But should you have to, when people are this cruel?" Emma's chest tightened. She hated that his words rang true. Still, she shook her head. "Do not fight my battles. They will twist it into something worse." He studied her for a moment, then straightened. "I will not embarrass you further. But remember, Emma's silence does not equal dignity. Sometimes it only feeds the wolves." With that, he turned and walked out, his presence leaving as swiftly as it had arrived. The room erupted with whispers the second he was gone. He knew her name. Why would someone like him care? Was he protecting her? Emma sat down, her hands trembling. She hated the eyes on her, the cruel curiosity. But beneath the fear, another feeling stirred a dangerous sense of validation. For one brief moment, someone had stood in her corner, and the memory of that shield burned brighter than the mockery surrounding her. That evening, as she walked home, Emma spotted Daniel again. He was leaning casually against a sleek black car parked near the bus stop. She froze, torn between anger and relief. "You should not be here," she said, her voice sharp. He smiled faintly. "And yet I am. I thought you might need a ride. I told you last night I can take the bus." Daniel's gaze was steady, unwavering. "You can, but do you want to, knowing they will be waiting for you tomorrow with more laughter?" Emma's chest rose and fell. She hated that he was right. She hated even more that part of her wanted to accept his offer, to step into the safety of his world even for a moment. "No," she whispered finally. "I will not give them another reason to talk." Daniel's expression shifted, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. "Then we will find another way." Emma frowned. "What do you mean?" He opened the car door, gesturing toward the passenger seat. "You will see soon enough." Emma stood frozen on the sidewalk, her pulse racing. She had no idea what game fate was playing, but she knew this much. Her life, once small and predictable, was about to collide with something far larger than she ever imagined. Emma hesitated at the edge of the sidewalk, staring at the open car door. The city air carried the faint smell of gasoline mixed with roasted chestnuts from a vendor down the street. Her heart raced. Accepting his offer felt dangerous, yet refusing felt like turning her back on something she could not quite name. Finally, she shook her head and stepped back. "I cannot. I hardly know you." Daniel closed the door slowly, his expression unreadable. "That is fair, but this is not about knowing me. It is about whether you deserve better than what they put you through today." Emma crossed her arms, clutching her bag tightly. "I have been dealing with people like that for a long time. I do not need someone swooping in and playing hero." For the first time, Daniel's calm demeanor cracked just slightly. His eyes sharpened, his voice firm. "What you call dealing with is allowing cruelty to continue, and you should not have to." Emma froze, torn between anger and a flicker of something that felt like relief. She hated that his words dug into the truth she avoided. She hated that he was right. Before she could respond, a child's voice called out from across the street. "Daddy!" Emma turned, startled. A young boy, maybe 6 or 7 years old, came running toward them, his small backpack bouncing with each step. Behind him trailed an older woman, likely the nanny, struggling to keep up. Daniel's entire expression softened instantly. He crouched as the boy launched himself into his arms. "Ethan," he said warmly, lifting him up. "You were supposed to be at home." The boy laughed, wrapping his arms around his father's neck. "Grandma said I could come with her to meet you." End of. Emma stood frozen, shock rippling through her. She stared at the man who had seemed so untouchable, so distant, now transformed into something entirely different, a father. Daniel glanced at Emma, as if only now remembering she was there. "Emma, this is my son, Ethan." The boy looked at her curiously, then grinned. "Hi." Emma managed a faint smile. "Hello." The nanny finally caught up, apologizing quickly. Daniel nodded to her, then set Ethan down gently. "Stay close." He turned back to Emma, his expression unreadable once again, but softer around the edges. Emma's thoughts spun wildly. A child, a single father, a man who carried not only power but also responsibility. She realized she knew nothing about him, yet every new piece unraveled her assumptions further. Daniel adjusted his son's backpack, then looked at Emma directly. "Now you see why I cannot always walk away. When you are raising someone, you learn that standing by is not an option." "How?" Emma's throat tightened. She wanted to argue, to push him away, but the sight of him holding his son silenced her. It was harder to dismiss his words now that she saw the weight behind them. Ethan tugged on his father's sleeve. "Daddy, are we going home?" "In a minute," Daniel said, his voice gentler than Emma had ever heard. He turned back to her. "I will not pressure you, but I want you to think about what happened tonight. You are stronger than you realize, but strength does not mean isolation. Emma's chest rose and fell rapidly. She could feel the walls she built around herself starting to crack, piece by piece. The memory of her coworkers' laughter still stung, but the image of Daniel shielding her from it both last night and today burned brighter. She forced herself to take a step back. "I need time," she said firmly, though her voice trembled. Daniel gave a small nod, accepting her words without protest. "Take all the time you need. I am not going anywhere." With that, he guided his son and the nanny toward the waiting car. Emma stood rooted to the sidewalk, watching as the black vehicle pulled away, its taillights glowing red against the darkening street. For a long moment, she simply stood there, clutching her bag, her pulse unsteady. The night that had begun as another cruel trick had revealed something she never expected. A man whose kindness was not weakness, whose strength carried both power and tenderness. And for the first time, Emma wondered if the humiliation she suffered was not the end of her story, but the strange beginning of something far greater. 2 days later, the rain came down in sheets across the city. The streets glistened with reflections of neon lights, umbrellas bobbing up and down as people rushed to get home. Emma pulled her thin jacket tighter around herself as she hurried down the sidewalk, clutching a paper bag of groceries to her chest. Her umbrella had broken earlier, so each step left her more soaked, her shoes squishing with every stride. She reached the bus stop and sighed with relief when she saw a small overhang to shield her from the downpour. She set the bag down, brushing wet strands of hair from her face. The night was cold, and the wind cut through her thin clothes like knives. She muttered softly to herself, "Just a few more minutes, just hold on." A sudden gust of wind tipped the bag, and before she could catch it, an apple rolled onto the sidewalk, bouncing toward the rushing street. Emma darted forward, reaching down to grab it when a car splashed past, spraying her with a wave of dirty rainwater. She gasped, stumbling back, shivering from the cold and humiliation. A voice came from behind her, steady and unmistakable. "You should not be standing out here alone." Emma turned sharply. Daniel stood there, an umbrella in hand, the rain beating off his shoulders. He looked impossibly composed despite the storm, his presence cutting through the chaos of the night. Her heart leapt in her chest, though her words came out defensive. "Why are you here?" "I was driving by," he said simply, "and I saw you. Get in the car before you catch pneumonia." Emma shook her head, clutching her bag tighter. "I cannot just accept rides from you. People already think—" Daniel stepped closer, his eyes firm. "Let them think what they want. You know the truth." Her pulse raced. She hated that his words cut through her excuses. She hated even more that she wanted to follow him, to step into the warmth of his world just for a moment. The rain poured harder, soaking her completely. Daniel held the umbrella above her, shielding her without asking. His coat brushed against her arm, carrying warmth she did not realize she was craving. Finally she whispered, "Fine, just this once." He guided her to the car, opening the door with quiet patience. She slid inside, hugging the grocery bag against her lap. The warmth of the leather seats and the faint scent of cedar wrapped around her like a cocoon. Daniel joined her, closing the door against the storm. For a moment, the silence inside the car felt louder than the rain outside. "You should not have been walking alone in weather like this," he said, his tone firm but not unkind. Emma looked down, embarrassed. "I did not have a choice. The bus is all I can afford." Daniel's expression softened. "You have been carrying too much by yourself." Her throat tightened. "I do not need pity." "I am not offering pity," he replied quietly. "I am offering respect. It takes strength to do what you do every day, but even the strongest people deserve someone in their corner." The words hit her harder than she expected. She turned her face toward the window, hiding the sting of tears she refused to let fall. The car jolted slightly as thunder rumbled overhead. Daniel reached for the heater controls, adjusting the temperature warmer. "Where do you live?" Emma hesitated, then gave him the address. She expected judgment. Her neighborhood was modest, far from the glittering towers of his world, but he only nodded and began driving. The city blurred past, streaks of light through rain-covered glass. Emma sat silently, her heart conflicted. She knew she should keep her distance, knew she should not let him blur the boundaries between them. But as the storm raged outside, she could not deny that his presence made her feel something she had not felt in years safe. When the car finally slowed in front of her small apartment building, Emma turned to him. "Thank you, for tonight." Daniel's gaze lingered on her, steady and unreadable. "Emma, this is not about tonight. It never was." She swallowed hard, gripping the door handle. His words echoed in her chest as she stepped out into the rain. She hurried inside, groceries clutched tight. But even long after she closed the door, her pulse still raced with the memory of his voice. For the first time in her life, she wondered if fate had not made a mistake after all, but was instead rewriting everything she thought she knew about love, dignity, and the walls she had built around her heart. The rain had passed by morning, leaving the streets slick and shining beneath the pale sunlight. Emma carried her worn tote bag as she hurried into the office, determined to bury herself in work and forget the strange comfort of last night. She convinced herself that Daniel's words were just kindness, nothing more. But the office buzzed louder than usual. People clustered in small groups, whispering, their eyes flicking toward her before darting away again. Emma kept her head down, making her way to her desk. Then she froze. On the front page of the Morning Business Journal, spread wide across the break room table, was a photograph. Daniel Carter, the city's most talked-about CEO, stepping out of a sleek black car with his young son. The headline blared his name, his company's successes, and his reputation as one of the most eligible bachelors in the country. Emma's breath caught in her throat. The same man who had shielded her from cruel laughter, who had draped his coat over her shoulders, who had spoken to her like she mattered. He was not just a stranger with quiet strength. He was a man whose life was built on power, influence, and wealth beyond anything she could imagine. Her coworkers swarmed the table, gasping and whispering, "That is him, the man who came here for Emma. She has been hiding something. She must have known." Emma's chest tightened. She wanted to shout that it was not true, that she had no idea who he really was until this very moment. But her voice refused to come. Before she could collect herself, a familiar presence filled the doorway. Daniel stepped into the office once again, dressed in another flawless suit, his expression composed yet unreadable. The room fell silent instantly. Emma stood quickly, her pulse hammering in her ears. "Why are you here again?" she whispered, barely managing to keep her voice steady. Daniel's eyes held hers, unwavering. "Because I do not want you to face this alone." The murmurs erupted behind them, sharp and merciless. She really trapped him. He must pity her. Emma flinched. She hated the way the words burned, hated the way they twisted everything into another cruel joke. She turned to him, her voice breaking. "You should not have come. This will only make it worse." But Daniel's voice was steady, cutting through the room. "No, Emma. What makes it worse is silence, and I will not stay silent when people treat you this way." Emma's breath caught as his words rang out in front of everyone. She knew in that moment that nothing would ever be the same again. The truth of who he was had shattered the fragile distance she tried to maintain, and now the world was watching. Her life had collided with his, in a way that could no longer be undone. The office had never felt so suffocating. Emma stood frozen beside her desk as Daniel's words lingered in the air, his presence towering over the whispers that refused to die down. Her coworkers exchanged glances, some wide-eyed, others smirking, waiting for her to crumble under the weight of their judgment. Then, something caught Emma's eye. Lying half-hidden beneath a stack of files on her desk was the very coat Daniel had draped over her shoulders that night at the bus stop. She had folded it neatly, intending to return it without anyone noticing. Now, in this charged silence, it became something more. A coworker sneered, pointing. "Look at that. She kept it as proof, trying to flaunt what she thinks she has." Emma's face burned, but before she could move, Daniel stepped forward and picked up the coat himself. He held it carefully, then looked directly at the room full of doubting eyes. "This coat is not proof of ambition," he said firmly. "It is proof of dignity. When others mocked her, she did not ask for help. She stood her ground. I was the one who offered it, not her. And she carried it here, folded neatly, because her character would not allow her to keep what did not belong to her." Ugh! The words struck the air like thunder. The sneers faltered, the whispers faded. For the first time, the mockery that had followed Emma for months began to unravel. Emma's throat tightened, her eyes stinging. She wanted to protest, to say he did not need to defend her like this, but her voice refused to come. The weight of his words pressed into her chest, heavier than the humiliation had ever been. One of the senior staff cleared his throat nervously. "Miss Carter, with all due respect, why involve yourself in this?" Daniel's gaze swept across the room, sharp and unyielding. "Because leadership is not about status or wealth. It is about standing up when you see injustice, no matter how small others may think it is." He placed the coat gently over Emma's chair, his voice steady. "And if anyone here thinks cruelty is entertainment, then they are not fit to call themselves professionals." The silence that followed was absolute. No one dared to meet his eyes. Emma stood motionless, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her chest. She realized in that moment that the coat, once just fabric draped over her shoulders, had become a symbol. It had been a shield in the rain, and now it was her vindication. Daniel turned back to her, his expression softer now. "You do not have to fight them alone anymore." Emma's lips trembled as she finally found her voice. "Why? Why go this far for me?" His answer was simple, yet it shook her to the core. "Because I see you, Emma. And I will not let anyone else diminish that." The weight of his words fell over the room like a curtain, leaving no space for doubt. For the first time, Emma did not feel small. She did not feel mocked. She felt seen. And in the silence that followed, her world began to change. The office never returned to its usual rhythm after that day. The whispers that once targeted Emma had been silenced, and though some eyes still lingered on her with curiosity, the sting of cruelty was gone. Daniel's words had shifted something in the room, something Emma could not undo, even if she wanted to. That evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the city skyline in shades of gold and crimson, Emma stepped outside, clutching her tote bag. She had hoped to slip away quietly, but Daniel was already waiting by his car. His son Ethan sat in the back seat, waving through the window with an easy grin that pierced the heaviness Emma carried. She approached slowly, her heart pounding with every step. "You should not keep showing up for me," she said softly, though the edge in her voice had dulled. Daniel's gaze was steady, unwavering. "Emma, this is not about showing up once or twice. It is about commitment, and I am not a man who does things halfway." Her breath caught. "Commitment?" He stepped closer, his voice low but certain. "From the moment I saw you sitting alone, enduring their laughter with dignity, I knew you were someone different. You do not measure worth in money or power, and that is exactly why you matter. I will not stand by and let you believe you are less than what you are." Emma's throat tightened. She had spent so long convincing herself she could only rely on her own strength. And yet here was a man who saw her fully, who refused to let her fight alone, who offered not pity but partnership. Ethan's voice piped up from the car window. "Daddy, are we going to take her with us?" Emma turned, startled, her eyes meeting the child's bright, innocent gaze. Daniel's expression softened as he glanced at his son, then back at her. "Out of the mouths of children," he said with a faint smile. "He is only asking what I already want to say. Emma, I want you with us. Not just for tonight, not just to quiet the laughter of others, but because I choose you." Tears welled in Emma's eyes, but this time they did not come from humiliation or loneliness. They came from a place she had buried long ago, a fragile hope she had not dared to let surface. Her voice shook as she whispered, "Are you certain? Our worlds are not the same." Daniel reached for her hand, strong and unwavering. "Status means nothing if it does not come with action, and I am showing you mine now. I will stand with you, openly, fully, if you will have me." For a moment, the city noise seemed to fade away. All Emma could hear was the pounding of her heart and the sincerity in his words. Slowly, she nodded, her tears breaking into a trembling smile. "Yes," she whispered, "I will." Daniel's hand tightened around hers, sealing the promise with quiet certainty. Behind him, Ethan clapped his hands in delight, his laughter ringing through the evening air. In that moment, the cruel prank that had once been meant to humiliate her had transformed into the beginning of something neither Emma nor Daniel could have predicted. What started as a joke ended as a vow of love, of justice, and of a future built not on wealth or power, but on truth, dignity, and the unshakable bond they now shared.